It's rare to see Bill Maher on such shaky ground as you're going to see in this.
I was on your show and you said, are you implying that that the election was stolen? And I was kind of iffy on it, right? Next morning, 8 o'clock, the phone rings. And he says, David, it's Donald Trump.
There's a boldness to this guy. He's not afraid to call Bill out.
And then he talked to me for like 20 minutes about how the election was stolen.
But it wasn't.
Well, I think it was.
He has an interesting argument here that parts of this I've not heard before.
But they've adjudicated this. They've looked at this. It was the most fair, honest election we've ever had.
So Bill Maher is making an equally bold claim that this was the most fair and honest election we've ever had.
I'm not talking about the votes. I'm not talking about counting the votes.
So notice the language here. He's not claiming that it was rigged.
That the Hunter Biden laptop was suppressed, the COVID information was suppressed. Zuckerberg said himself that the White House pressured him not to bring forward the information on the laptop. Rasmussen said, had that come out, there would have been a 17-point spread.
Oh, please.
I'm not sure how he's calculating the exact 17-point spread.
That's so ridiculous. Those things are true. And they did suppress the Hunter Biden. The press did do that. I've said this many times myself, and COVID. Nobody was more out there about we weren't allowed to hear about what we wanted to hear about COVID than I was. But would it have swung the election? Every election, some things are suppressed.
So to recover from this, Bill paints the picture, well, this is just a common occurrence. No election is fair now all of a sudden, even though just a moment ago he was claiming it was the most fair election we've ever had.
It's not a very fair game, politics, but we do play within a certain type of rules.
Now suddenly we do play within a set of rules.
One of them is no ringers from the outside.
Wait, we play within a certain amount of rules?
Yes, we always did before.
But not this one. And this is kryptonite for Bill Maher.
Like, we're not going to have other countries involved in our elections. We'll do whatever we want to each other, but we're not going to do that. And Trump...
Who did it?
Well, Trump publicly said, Russia, if you're listening, could you get into Hillary's emails? That kind of stuff.
Dude, he was joking about.
Oh, boy, you swallowed the whole...
So wait a second. Are you saying that he would not... Okay, you want to adjudicate the last 8 years. Were you saying he was a Russian spy?
I did not say that.
Did you say he...
I said it's a ringer,
And this metaphor is remarkable. He's claiming that they brought in a stealthy baseball hitter that was able to knock it out of the park.
And once in a while, a team, it would be like batting third for My Fair Lady, and it was Jose Canseco. It was like some bartender's friend who would hit the ball a million. That's a ringer. That's called a ringer. Yeah. You're not really supposed to be in that game. And Trump invited that in a way nobody else ever did.
So who is the ringer in this metaphor? Russia?
He certainly invited another country to do things, and they took advantage of it, of course.
Oh.
Would it have...
So David notices this and tries to get specific.
How did they take advantage of it?
Well, Trump's campaign manager was sharing polling data with a GRU agent.
That's the ringer. Polling data, that's pretty close to public information. That's kind of the point of polls. All a poll is an attempt to measure public sentiment.
Maybe.
Well, okay, that's something that, even Nixon didn't do that.
Let's just assume that is true, which I'm not sure that it is. That's not classified information that would give Russia some massive upper hand because they can see which way the wind's blowing now.
Wait, this is the first that I've heard. A, and B, if it's true, and I'm not saying that it is, how did that influence the election?
Well, we know that Russia would put things on the internet that weren't true just to get people fighting, that kind of stuff.
Like what?
They would say the Pope, they would put up some meme about, the Pope is backing Trump.
The KGB gets together like, comrades, today we wreak havoc on America. How are we going to do that? We post about the Pope on Facebook.
It wasn't true, but people believed it and then they started to fight over it.
Here's my question. When last we spoke several years ago, you were stuck on this issue. You're still stuck on it. How come?
Because it's not been resolved.
I remember when Trump first won in 2016, I had many close to me claiming that, well, this was a rigged election because of Russians on Facebook. That was literally the explanation given, which is the same thing Bill is doing here.
So wait, what is it that hasn't been resolved?
the asymmetry of American elections. The fact that if one party, the Republican Party, wins the election, the other party goes, okay.
Literally a few seconds ago, you were describing how unfair an election was.
I don't have to imagine what he did in 2020, which was never concede the election. I'm not even
Dude, he didn't have to concede the election. He lost.
This is an interesting way to approach this.
If somebody is beaten in a prize fight and the other guy gets the belt, the person who's beaten does not have to concede. It's not necessary. He's lost.
Well, it is necessary. The analogy falls down because that if a prize fighter loses, it doesn't inspire people to riot.
How did he inspire people to riot?
By not conceding the election.
Oh, come on. Oh, come on.
What?
Is it possible to point out these flaws while not condoning rioting on January 6th?
Come on. So wait a second. He didn't say the words, I concede, and so that meant people rioted?
Yes. What do you think January 6th was about?
What do you think January 6th was?
It was about people who did not hear their leader say, as every other leader in this country has said after an election, okay, I lost. We welcome the new guy. We had disagreements, but now we're all Americans.
There were many after 2016 that claimed, as you did just a moment ago, that Russians on Facebook impacted Trump's ability to gain office.
When Obama took over, George Bush stood next to him and he said, we want you to succeed because when you succeed, Trump didn't do any of that.
Okay. So what?
Well, so what? It inspires half the country to not accept the basic democratic principle that we have elections, and when you lose, you go away.
That's a broad generalization to claim that half the country has thrown out the democratic principle of a fair election.
Well, you like me have built a career out of nothing except talent and a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work, but you're full of shit.
Bill just kind of, he's like, well, I can see where you're going with that one. It's an interesting reaction to the...
You're full of shit. What I don't understand when you say that he did not say the words I concede caused half the country, which you just said, to riot.
No, I didn't say half the country rioted. A lot of people rioted, and it was less than half the country because he got less than half the votes and still won. That's okay. That's our system. But a good deal of the country, approaching half, the people who are MAGA, the people who love him, at least a third of the country, will now in the future never accept any electoral result.
I think that's a bit, he's getting out over his skis a little bit here.
Okay, what do you think we'd be today if Kamala Harris had run?
What's that?
What do you think we would be today if Kamala Harris had won?
Well,
there are moments that Bill's just like, and he doesn't quite know what to say.
What would happen? Would Israel still exist? I don't think so.
Still exist, of course. Why wouldn't they exist?
Why wouldn't they exist? Because the Obama Marxist, Leninist, Islamists that were taken up during the... Here's a good question that I would ask you, is who was running the country during the 4 years that Biden was out of his mind and demented?
Well, he wasn't out of his mind and demented for 4 years. He probably wasn't out of his mind or demented even on the last day. He just did The View.
I think this was a mistake here on Bill's part because this story has become so transparent. This could backfire.
Did the Democrats do a horrible thing in propping him up and keeping him in office and trying to run him again? Yeah, they did. Of course.
Many believe that that was even worse than Watergate. This is a debate that is ongoing right now.
I am never easy on the Democrats or the left. And I'm totally with you on Israel, but they would, of course, still exist because they can defend themselves. But you've said things like, you know, liberals have never done anything for Israel. That's bullshit. Harry Truman recognized Israel when many people told him not to.
Excuse me, I never said that.
Yeah, you did.
Show it to me.
Yeah, he didn't say that.
I'll tell you what, show it to me and I'll give $10,000 to the charity of your choice. No, wait, no. Okay. I'm serious.
No,
wait a second.
I'll find it.
You're pretty good.
I'll find it.
Good.
And this guy is just measured, calm. There's a boldness to this guy. He's not afraid to call Bill out.
I'm going to give $10,000. You show it to me, and I will give $10,000 to the charity of your choice.
Okay.
Because you're throwing around a lot of generalizations, and I have a bigger question.
Not generalization.
Oh, really?
What's the generalization?
That half the country would have rioted?
If I got that quote wrong, I apologize, and I will take it back.
This is Bill Maher at his most shaky footing.
I don't want to piss you off. I'm
No.
your biggest fan. I don't. The fact that we don't agree on something so fundamental is still completely okay with me.
And he paints this as though it's just so fundamental you can't that insinuates that you can't even question it. You've acknowledged that there is much to question here.